This is made by Gloria Lee with me, Gloria Lee. This is going to be episode 1 of my knitting, a little bit of sewing podcast, and I'm just going to go over my first year of knitting, what I've learned, what I hope to do in the future, and my journey so far with these patterns and projects that I've worked on. So a little bit about me. I have made clothes before. I'm a huge fan of Project Runway, and when I was in 7th or 8th grade, I was exposed to Project Runway for the first time, obsessed with it. I watched all 5 seasons in, I want to say, less than a month. And so because of that, I really wanted to make my own clothes. And I've kind of I have an on and off relationship with making clothes since then. And I'll throw up a picture of something I made, these 4 dresses that I made, the 3 for the fashion show, and then the 1 that I made for myself. I had a little bit of experience with crochet, learned from my sister. I could do a chain and then kind of go back and forth so I could make a rectangle, and that's really the extent of my crochet experience. And I would say the issue that I had with crochet and even knitting, from what I thought, was that I thought that it looked bulky, that it was really, the yarn was always thick, it didn't look professional, and there was like a crafty look to it. And so how I got into knitting was last year, December of 2022, I was scrolling TikTok, as I do, before bed, and in that like vulnerable space between wake and sleep, I think I came upon this knitting TikTok, and I'll throw this up here. And it was this woman's first year of knitting, and I saw the Cumulus Tee. It's not what I'm wearing. And so I saw that tee, and it looked so fine. And obviously it's PetiteKnit, petite yarn. And I went to bed with the thought in mind, I'm gonna start knitting tomorrow. And so it was a very impulsive decision. One TikTok that kind of, led me down this whole way. And the next day after work, I was excited to go to Michael's, and I got yarn, needles, double pointed needles, stitch markers, I got just a basic kit for a first time knitter. And that really was the entrance. It was one TikTok video, and the next day I started, and that day was December 16th, 2022. So it's not a special day or anything because it is in September. So it's only been about 9 months that I've been knitting. 9 months that I've been knitting, and I thought I would go over everything that I've knit my first year, I guess my first 9 months of knitting. So let's get into it. The first thing I made was this scarf. You can see it's curling in. I found a video. I knew that I wanted to make clothes, but I just thought, I have to have a starter project, and I think most people start with a scarf, maybe a beanie. And so this is from Emma P on YouTube. I'll put the link in the description and throw up a little picture right here. This is some kind of a basic acrylic yarn. I don't even have the sleeve. I didn't write notes. I just got 2 skeins of this yarn. I used a US 8 5mm. I'm gonna go by millimeters just because that's what I use, even though I do live in the US, but I like to go by millimeters. 5mm needle, 70 stitches, back and forth and stockinette. And what's very funny is, I'm glad I did stockinette, so I learned how to purl, but the funny thing is I actually blocked this and it did nothing. It made it really heavy, and I blocked it on the countertop, and it was a good experience blocking, but I don't think you really are supposed to block acrylic. Correct me if I'm wrong, go for it. But it was a good experience, and it's very heavy, and I can wear this, and it's acrylic. I don't really wear acrylic even before I started knitting, so cute, gold. But that was my first project ever, and I was very happy about this. I finished this in about 2 weeks. I used the 5mm clover bamboo needles with the clear plastic string between them. They were circular needles. So I was quite happy with this. I'm not gonna wear it, but it's my first thing, so it is very special. I probably will keep it for a while. The next thing that I made was a baby sock that you can find from Yulia, Ilinkova. Basic family socks, but I actually was not using Ravelry at the time. So I found this baby sock video linked below as well, and I had this $4 like mini skein of perennial yarn that I just wanted. I needed something to knit when I went on the plane. I like caught the bug and I was like, I need to do something. I finished the scarf and I didn't have a new project, and I was like, let's just use this $4 mini skein and make a baby sock. One single baby sock to learn how to make socks. And so I ended up giving it to a younger cousin. She has it as a souvenir, something I made. It's not, I don't even know if it would fit a baby because I kind of modified it. I was like, this is enough, these are enough stitches. Let's just keep going, learn how to do the heel flap, learn how to do the gusset, learn how to, you know, decrease into a toe. It was about learning how to go through the sock. So if there was like, it wasn't perfect and it was probably a wonky sock, but I will have a picture of that here. So that was the second thing I made. Then over winter break, winter of 2022, I was out of town, and so I just bought yarn from Walmart and did like some little fun projects for my cousins. And so I made a really small beanie here for a stuffed bear. I also made a cat hat for a cousin, which I got from a video that I can't find anymore, and that's shown here. And it was just way too big, but it was a good experience. It was knit flat and you sewed up the sides. Once I came back home after winter break, I asked for Christmas for 6 hanks of Purl Soho's linen quill, and I was obsessed with the half and half triangles wrap. I watched so many, video after video. I think the Italian Knitter podcast talked about it. Stacey Elstone has a tutorial video, and I just loved the idea. I love a shawl, so that was what I started working on. January 1st, it was like important, like the first day of the year I would start working on it, and it was a slog. It took 8.5 months to get through the first triangle, and I took a 3-month break knitting in between. I also knit stuff like in between during this. It was a really just sitting there. It was sitting on the couch and it was like, okay, do a row. But the way that it is, so I have it here, the way that you knit it up is you start with 260 if you do the larger size, and then you decrease to 259, 258. And so the first few rows, even though you're doing one row of 260, that row is a larger percentage of later rows because it's going to decrease. It'll make a little triangle. So I started with the wheat flower color. So the 2 colors I used are wheat flower and raw sienna, and they're kind of similar. I didn't want like a super contrasting colorway, so this is pretty neutral, pretty, I can wear it with a lot of the clothes that I have. So you start with 260 decrease, and I don't know if you can kind of see, but I started to learn how to like throw English style about like maybe 2 inches in. So it's very loose and not even, and it gets more even as you keep going. And so it was taking me a long time because the way I was knitting was I was taking the string and using like my whole hand to loop it over. And now I can, you know, do English style. So it got faster, but it was really difficult the first 10 rows. It just took so long. So the first half took me 8 months, and the second half, I started August, and so the second half took me only 1 month. So if I was really focusing on it and primarily knitting on this, I think I could have finished this in 2 months, but it was just such a big project for me. But I am quite happy with it. It's still warm here. It's getting cooler, but I think it'll be really warm, and I can use it as like kind of a blanket on the couch if it gets cooler. So I am quite pleased with it. Would I make another one? Justin Bieber says never say never, so I don't know. The next thing I made was the Cumulus Tee by PetiteKnit, and this was the t-shirt that I saw in that first TikTok video that got me into knitting in the first place. So I have it here. I ended up frogging the whole thing. I used stainless garn Tinline, 3mm needles, and for ribbing I would have used 2.75. And I did everything except for the I-cord collar and I guess the sleeves. But when I tried it on, it was too tight for my liking. I like a lot of positive ease. And so I decided to frog it instead of pushing through and finishing it and never going to wear it. I really liked the yarn. So I scoured Ravelry to find another t-shirt that might work a little bit more for what I was looking for. And I think also the Cumulus Tee looks great on a lot of people, but I would say that it favors people with longer backs because it is like really longer sleeves all the way to the elbows and it's a long torso. Obviously you can modify that, but I was looking for something a little more boxy. So after I frogged that, I ended up choosing the cropped Western tee by Witre Design. So I used Santa's Garn Tinline in 1002, which is just plain white. And I actually used 3.25 for the stockinette and 2.75 for the ribbing. And the reason why I changed from 3mm to 3.25mm is, one, I realized that I'm knitting a little tighter than what the pattern called for, as well as I had just gotten the interchangeable needle set. And for 40 inches, I only had a 40 inch for the 3.25 because the small set doesn't actually have 3mm. So for my fixed circulars, it was maybe 32 inches, which was getting, because it is so pretty big, it wasn't enough of the red cord. So this is it. This is the cropped Western tee. You might be asking, why is it not white? So I ended up using, like, my project bag was this red bag and it actually stained the yarn, and so I had this like stripe that was like really light pink, and I tried to get it out, but I couldn't, and so I got out enough that it looked like a stain and not like an obvious stripe. And so I decided that, you know, it's a casual t-shirt, so I would just dye it black. And so I have Rit dye. I just used this. This is black. And it's supposedly for cotton, wool, nylon, and more. And so, but I think I can see some, like, it's charcoal more than anything, and it's not super even, and I don't know if that was the way that I dyed it in the pot and didn't give enough room, so you can see like lighter areas, but I'm okay with it because it can be like a loungy, casual shirt. But I am quite happy with this. If there's one thing that I don't know, and please comment below if you have any solution to this, but it pulls forward, and I don't know if that's just the way my body is, and so I'm constantly having to push it forward, and there is a little bit of shorter shaping in the back, but maybe I need more for my special back. And so this is my first garment, my first t-shirt. I have, you know, scarf, shawl, but this is like the first garment. Sock's not a garment, it's an accessory, right? So right after that, one thing I do want to say about this is, if you get the pattern for the cropped Western tee, it's actually for a heavier yarn. So I had to do a lot of math to figure out. I used the size large, but I modified the stitch counts and the row counts to match my gauge. And so I did a lot more math than I would have preferred to, and I think there might have been some things that were off about the shirt, but I'm okay with it. It's very loose, very drapey, so I'm happy about it. But I had to do a lot of my own calculations to kind of figure out, because even if I sized up, it never went up to enough stitches I would need because it's such a thin yarn. Next, I decided to make the Ranunculus by Midori Hirose. Everyone makes the Ranunculus, and I was inspired by all the YouTubers who also make it. So I found Knit Picks Kotlin at a thrift store, actually, and I found like 5 skeins of it. So So I was very happy about that because the fiber content looks like, if you read it, I forget what it is, like 45% cotton and 55 linen, something like that. But it's natural fibers, plant fiber, and I thought it would be great for the summer, great for the ranunculus. Unfortunately, it is, and I did all of it, and I actually pulled frog the bottom half because I was going to use the yarn to test out something else. But I did the whole thing, and I think because I am a tight knitter and even my bind off is kind of tight, it's too tight at the sleeves that I wouldn't wear it, but it's also really itchy. So I used 6mm needles, the Knit Picks Cotlin in colorway Gosling. So it's kind of like a warm gray. I did the wide neck, so it fits fine. The torso is great, but it's itchy, and then the arms around the bicep, it's really tight. So it's not something that, it wouldn't have been something I wore. And I'm, following the advice of a lot of the other knitting podcasters I listen to. It's like, if you don't love it, either frog it or fix it. And I think I just can't work with this yarn. I would repurpose this yarn to make a bag, and I have some project ideas in mind, but for now it's just hanging out in my basket. So that was an attempt. I will make another one. I think maybe I might buy larger needles or figure out a different yarn, because I love doing the yoke. Was just such a treat, and it was so beautiful, and I would just do a row and then just stare at it. I was just constantly staring at it. So I love this pattern. I think Midori does a really great job of writing the pattern as well. So nothing against the pattern, it's just the yarn and the way that I knit. Maybe I need larger needles to make because all the sleeves will end up being the same, I think the same stitches. I could be wrong, it's been a while. The next thing I made was the Fairy Maiden socks by This Handmade Life. And it is in Queensland Kathmandu fingering in yellow jacket. That's this colorway. I got it on local yarn store day. Not really, it was by the beach when I was visiting my sister. I used 2.75mm, which I think is too big. It came out a little bit loose, but that's okay. It will be great to wear in the winter or this fall around the house when it gets cold. And it was my first time doing any cabling, or really any lace. No, the Ranunculus has lace, but really any cabling. So it's really cool. I enjoyed this. Very proud of my first sock pattern. The yarn, I will say, was pretty difficult for me to use. I think because it is really woolly, and it's not superwash at all. There's like a, I don't know, 5% cashmere. So it's a nice yarn, but I think it's too stretchy for me, and so it made it difficult to knit in the summer. Maybe when it gets colder, I have an unfinished, I have to work the foot of the sock and the toe, but I think I'm gonna frog it because it's been so long. I don't remember anything about this sock. But yeah, my first complete pair of socks. Now I'll go into my works in progress. The first thing I have is the Wedding Necktie by Susan B. Anderson. This is for my sister's wedding coming up, but it's for my brother. And her colors are like teal, turquoise, and burnt orange. So this is in Knitting for Olive Merino in burnt orange. It is a seed stitch. It's in seed stitch. And this is about, I don't know, 24 inches. And so I have over more than half. I'm less than halfway done with this, but I've got to finish this soon. And I really have had a really good experience with Knitting for Olive Merino. I wasn't sure if like maybe wool isn't for me, but I've really enjoyed knitting this. And I was on a train to New York from the DC area, and it was really nice to just knit back and forth, and I got a lot done. So yeah, need to have that done soon. The next thing I am working on, which is, it could be a pair, but it's two unfinished pairs. And this is Cloudburst by Adrienne Gray. This is in Knitting for Olive Merino in Licorice using 2.75 millimeters, and this is in Purl Soho Linen Quill Wheat Flour using 3 millimeter needles. Now, this image of Adrienne Gray's Cloudburst is different from this. I changed the lace motif, and I got the lace motif by using Winter's Frost by This Handmade Life. So I kind of remixed the two. And I like this lace motif better. For some reason, Cloudburst, it wasn't speaking to me. So this, it's a little baggy here, but I think this would be really nice this winter. It's very delicate and feminine. And linen quill is like a little rustic, so it has kind of like that look and that feel. And this is going to be a gift for someone. And then this is a pair for me. It's a little tight and it doesn't even cover any of the fingers, but I think that's okay. Then it's good for walking. I can still, you know, have full range of motion with my hands, use my phone if I want to. So I'm quite happy with these, but I need to finish them. And it's like second sock syndrome all over again, but they don't take very long, 1 to 2 days. Just put on an episode of something and I'll be able to knock those out and then start on a garment next. The only thing I have set up, like I have the pattern for and the yarn for, is a sweater that I'll be making for my husband. I'll provide more information about that next video. But that's all. Thank you for joining me, my first episode. If you like this video, subscribe, and if you like this video, like it, prove it. And all the information that I talked about will be in the description box below. You can follow me on Ravelry at Made by Gloria Lee. Follow me on Instagram, madeby.glorialee, and I'll see you guys next time.